Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining, and happy International Men's Day to everyone that's joined. I just wanted to thank all of the panel, first of all, for joining and the objective today. So I'm sure I'm preaching to the converted, but it's such an important topic, men's mental health and mental health wider. So I'm sure a lot of people have seen the stats, but 80% of all suicides are men, and that's why we're focusing on men's mental health. But that's the aim of this week with International Men's Day. But it's a topic that affects everyone. But there's a focus on men today because of International Men's Day. I hope you're all wearing blue and your blue ribbon. Um, and the stats say that 40% of men have never spoken about their mental health. So we've got a great panel, but that's the objective today. Like, I'd love for us to share some insights from the panel, and hopefully talk about the stigma and maybe try and reduce that 40% in our organisation, so people do find a safe place to talk and lean on each other. But without further ado, I will ask the panel to go around and introduce themselves. So I can see Sharina in front of me. If you want to go first, Sharina, and then pick who you hand over to introduce themselves.
Absolutely. Thank you, Vish. And thank you, everyone, for joining. Happy International Men's Day. I am an ally for the men's mental health and a very big supporter. On a personal level, I've seen the negative and positive side effects of having a tough upbringing and hiding mental health. Therefore, my goal is to create an environment where these conversations can happen openly, as this is critical for the well-being of our colleagues and our organization. James and myself chair the mental health ERG across JAM and DCC, and we have collaborated with the Men's Mental Health Association to ensure that we cover all bases. And with that, I will hand this over to James.
You're on mute, James.
There's always one on every call. James Taptinos, I'm Vice President of Global Sales for the GEM US MIM Pro Group. Been a sales professional most of my life, even before I even knew I was a salesman. Brought up in an immigrant family, which I'll be glad to share a little bit more about later, and ultimately strength and not having any vulnerability outwardly is not exactly something that I was brought up with. So being a part of this group, the mental health awareness group, as well as the men's mental health group, has allowed me to find an avenue to divest of some of the heaviness that I've probably carried for far too long in my life. And being part of that group also, which I'm going to stress for everybody that's on this call, being a part of that group and helping others, even if just being there for an ear, makes you feel better. And that's a pretty awesome thing. So Rickey, I'd like to hand it over to you.
Okay. I'm not on mute, right?
No.
Rickey Morrison. I'm the head of pricing for DCC North America. I haven't been here. I think I'm going on maybe my 5th month, but I'm really excited to talk about this for the, 25 or 26 people that are here, and then obviously the folks that are here as part of the panel. It's an important topic, and what you'll hear today is two things, why this is so important, but also perhaps some of the anecdotes in our own experiences about why this is so meaningful. I spent some time in combat many moons ago, still carry a lot of that weight with me to this day. And just the reach and connection with people has allowed me to at least get to a place of a little bit better balance in my day to day. So this is an important topic for all of us. And it's a business imperative too, believe it or not, that impacts our day to day, our business performance, and how we interact with one another in a business or corporate environment too. So looking forward to the conversation today. And how about Howard?
Thanks, Ricky. Yeah, so really, I'm here today to help, or just to share a mental health experience that I went through last year, share some of the events that led up to it, and but also shine a light on the experience that I went through and where I am now. So yeah, I'm very fortunate to be able to come to you today to talk through it. Troy, can I hand over to yourself?
Sure. Yeah, Troy Draper. I work for all of you, so that's my day-to-day role. I'm passionate about all of our ERGs, but this one in particular hits home really closely to me and in my family's history and close friends, as well as a lot of personal experience with it. So super excited to be part of the panel today. Happy to really be in this long term with all of you as we work to improve our mental health. I think it's something that is critical to each of our daily lives and how we function, and look forward to this conversation and many more to come. With that, let me hand it over to Robert.
All right, thanks, Troy. My name is Robert Zayats. I'm a distribution center manager here in Wisconsin for Elmo. Like Sharina, I had a challenging childhood that helped me grow, and even though it was difficult, I wouldn't change it for the world. I think it made me be a better person and helped me understand things that others were going through that may or may not have been exposed to me. And I'm here to help support. We have a lot of hourly employees that face some very difficult challenges, especially outside the workplace. And I'm here to help them in any way I can. And with that, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Well, I think Eric's in the background, so you'll see a whole load of Eric tomorrow, because Eric will be hosting the chat with Dave Callan, which you should all have in your diary. So I'm looking forward to that. So we'll keep Eric back until tomorrow. But no, thanks for introducing yourself. There was a few points I just want to pick up on. One, Troy saying he works for Resource, so that's an invitation to upward delegate whenever we can. So thanks for that, Troy. But the two bits James and Ricky mentioned about the intersection about feeling good and helping each other and business performance. Like I touched on the stats at the start, but 80% of all suicides are men. 40% of men say they've never spoken about their mental health. It's the second leading cause of death for men aged between 25 to 45, which is, it always surprised me when I read that one. And the other one that's really sobering is every 14 minutes, a man dies by suicide in the US. And, as we started to put this men's mental health committee together, like the amount of people I spoke to who have been touched by this subject, it just makes you realize that the 14 minutes is real. And during this 1 hour call, 4 men will have committed suicide because they couldn't get the support. They didn't feel they could go and reach out for support. And the bit I just wanted to touch on was the bit Ricky and James touched on is why are we doing all this? One, like James says, it's really, I think we've got an incredible community here. So many great people who can support each other and help each other. And like James says, it feels good to potentially save lives while we're doing the great work that we do. And it's an altruistically nice thing to do to help each other. And no doubt we will need support both ways. But a bit Ricky mentioned around business performance, it's statistically proven over and over and over again by studies done from different thought leadership tanks that more inclusive organizations have more people in their organization that are at their best, create more innovation, create more ideas, and outperform the competition. So Ricky's spot on that apart from creating a great place to work, it also drives people to feel safe here, people to feel that this is their home, and people to feel safe to talk up, to drive innovation. So I just wanted to share that. We've now got Andy who's joined us. Andy, we'll just do an introduction. So it'd be great if you could do a short introduction and then we'll get into the panel conversation.
Okay, great. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, perfect. Well, I can.
Right, okay. I had to switch to my phone. I was having awful problems trying to connect on my laptop. So can you see me as well?
Yep.
Great. All right. Brief introduction then. My name's Andy Wareham. I'm a therapist, a counsellor in the UK. I've been doing that in private practice for 4.5 years. Prior to that, I was a teacher and senior leader in secondary education in the UK. And I've also got lived experience of a mental health disorder. So 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with type 2 affective bipolar disorder.
Wow. And thank you so much, Andy, for generously giving your time up. And thanks, Howard, for coercing or whatever tactics you used to get Andy to help us on our panel chat. But we'll come back to Andy. But so first of all, I want to start with you, Troy. Like we have so many amazing things going on in our organisation. I'm sure there's lots of amazing aspects to managing so many people, but I'm sure that comes with pressures. So it'd be great if you could talk a little bit about your context.
Yeah, thanks, Vish. I appreciate that. And thanks everyone for taking some time on the call today. Just a little bit, about my story and kind of as it relates into leadership. First thing I'd say is we're all leaders, and some of us are leading other people. Some of us are leading friends. Some of us are leading family. Every one of us are leading ourselves. And, ultimately we're responsible for our own care. And I think one of the important things about this group, and something I haven't had in my life, is a lot of support around me to be able to talk about these things and to be able to support each other. And so, my first point is we're all leaders, and we're all responsible for this, for ourselves and for the people around us, people we work with and people we care for. Personally, about 15 years ago, it's 2011, I moved into the biggest job of my life. It was the biggest career step that I had ever taken, that I've ever taken in my career. And it moved me from California to Dallas. And, I left what was a pretty good situation, family, good friends, good culture, good infrastructure, good company. And I took a leap of faith to take a bigger job, move to a new city where I didn't know anyone, moved on my own into a small apartment downtown Dallas, and into a new industry that I hadn't been part of. And, as I did that, I went in, I was in pretty good shape. Physically, I felt like I was in good shape. Mentally, I felt like my career had progressed well. And as I got into that job, I quickly realized that, I wasn't fully prepared for that level of leadership and that level of responsibility, that I would need to grow into that. I didn't have close friends or support around me. The people at work were very tied into each other in the industry, and it was kind of hard to be able to get myself integrated into the group, to feel like I was part of the team. And I'm living above a taco shop in downtown Dallas, which I frequented way too much, which started to take a toll on my physical health as well. And it really came to a head for me. I had been there about 4 or 5 months. Things weren't going great. I was really second guessing the decision that I had made, and was thinking, how do I unwind all of this now? And had all sorts of thoughts in my head. And, there were nights that I started to wake up at about 3 o'clock in the morning. And I don't know if any of you had this before, your mind just starts spinning on everything. And, I couldn't get back to sleep. So now I'm sleeping maybe 3 or 4 hours a night. I'm trying to learn the big job and spending, 12 or 14 hours at the office. I'm not exercising at all, and I'm eating terribly. And, that cycle went on for probably about a month. And I started to feel worse and worse. And mentally, I wasn't sharp at work. I wasn't progressing very well. And I hit a point where, I still remember the night I had to make a decision on what I was going to do and how I was going to handle it. And it would have been great through all of this to be able to have some support and feel like I could reach out to people, but I didn't feel like I could. And it wasn't even that I didn't have people who would support me. There are people who absolutely would, but I didn't feel comfortable reaching out to them for help. And, as I laid in bed one night and thought, what am I going to do about this? I started to, the thought that came to my head was, I've got to start to build some small habits. I got to do something different, because I can't keep doing what I'm doing, because the path I was on was not a good one, and I knew it. And so, I can't solve everything. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, you try and solve all the world problems, and at 7 o'clock, you try to go function at work, solving none of them. And so I started with the very simplest of things, which was every day, no matter what happens, what time it is, early or late, I'm going to exercise for 30 minutes and start to try to do some things physically, because I was really starting to just feel poor overall, mentally and physically. And I started there, and over a period of time, I was able to get myself back to a point where I felt a little bit better. As with most things in life, if you could endure for a little while, things do get better. But the learning that I had from it was really a couple things. Was that one, as I look back on that experience, and it took probably, I don't know, the better part of a year before I really felt like, okay, I'm okay again. There was a long period of time in there where I felt like I really wasn't. And the turning point came when I became intentional about things, and really put my mental health in focus. And when I did, it started to put my physical health in focus with it, because I really believe those two things go hand in hand. And so I was able to kind of work my way through it. And then later, I recognized people coming into the business, and all of us as leaders, whether it's new friends or new companies or new people coming in, that lesson for me was one of, we need to help people feel better about when they come into a company as leaders, and how do we build that culture. And part of the whole idea behind saying, hey, look, we want to be in the office, is that those relationships are really, really important. And it's not about the business results are there, and that's kind of, in my mind, secondary. The primary thing is all of us individually, and how do we build those networks so that when you are struggling and you come into a company, somebody's going, no, you're going to be part of this group, and we are going to go out for drinks after, and there's going to be more to this than just show up, do your job, go home and stress. And so, from a leadership perspective, I look back on that experience and think about it every time we have someone coming in. And I thought about it as I came into the company. I haven't been here for a year yet, different industry, working out of Philadelphia city. I hadn't spent much time in, primarily a lot of time on the road. It's really mentally draining. And it's one of those things that I don't think you ever get to the destination. I think it's a journey that you go on for your entire life. And now I feel like I have support around me, and I'm more comfortable leaning on that support. But I do think it's something that, as things change and as your life changes and things happen, and I'm at the age now where I'm starting to lose people that were very influential in my life, family that's gotten older, and some of the mentors in my life have started to pass away and things. And so, as we go through those changes in life, I think it's something that we'll always have to focus on. But being able to turn to each other and being able to take time out on days like today to be intentional about what we're doing as a company and what we're doing individually to help each other and to help ourselves, I think is critically important. And y'all may not know it, but there are a lot of you on this call and in the company that I lean on heavily. Health. And I don't call it out necessarily as that. And I don't think that there shouldn't be a stigma around doing that. You should absolutely be able to, especially when times are really difficult. But I think a lot of us do, lean on folks. And I think being able to create this kind of an environment where we feel safe at work in this kind of a forum to be able to say, hey, I'm struggling. And it doesn't necessarily mean that it's, suicidal thoughts or that the end is near. It can be things like, hey, I feel like I'm kind of starting to slide, or I'm going through a really difficult time right now. And being able to express those things and talk about them, I think is really, really important. And it is an absolute necessity, both in my job and in my personal life, that I feel like I have that and have those people around me. Especially excited to have Andy on, as we think about professionals who do this for a living, and what is the code. I think we all have lived experience, and we've all been through the ups and downs of life and tried to figure a lot of it out. But being able to have a professional be able to help us think through it, I think is really important as well. And then, also we've talked a lot about our EAP line, our employee assistance, and being able to use support there if we don't feel like we have other support. I think it's important that everyone knows the resources that there are around us to be able to help and get professional help, certainly when we need it. And I think at stages in everyone's life, we need that. That's certainly true for my life and the experience I've had, and for experiences to come, I'm sure I'm going to need it as well. So that's a little of my thought and experience around it. One of the reasons that I'm so passionate about this and believe in what we're doing here to help support each other. Bish?
Thanks, Troy. There was so much in there. It was incredible. And I think, if I think back to that 40% of men don't seek help, I think, well, at least for me, and I'm hoping for others, to know that the CEO went through struggles and was vulnerable. I'm hoping that kind of shows some role modeling to our organisation. And without sound like I'm blowing smoke up the CEO, Troy, you asked, the Mental Health Committee asked you on Monday for an invitation for everyone to take half an hour off to go and ask someone how they're doing and take time out of work. And Troy's response was emphatically yes, because to Rickey's point, I think it's great to have a leader that recognises when people are in the best shape, we'll get the best performance. So I just want to thank you, Troy, on behalf of the committee for that. But you talked a lot about there was a fair bit in there about allyship and supporting new people into the business and existing people. And I can't help look at Sharina, who's been an incredible ally for all things mental health, not just men's mental health. But Sharina, if I can invite you to maybe talk about some of your lessons and insights about the role of allyship and how we make some of the things Troy talked about supporting each other more real.
Absolutely, thank you. So mostly my role as an ally isn't to lead a conversation, it's to listen, to help you amplify your voice, and to help remove those barriers. One thing that stood out to me was Troy, being the CEO, was able to openly talk about it. And I think back to many years ago when my father went through a major mental health crisis and had no one to talk to. We come from a very big Indian family, lots of uncles and aunts, and he had no one to talk to. He couldn't talk to any of my uncles. He couldn't talk to any of my aunts because all their responses were always, it doesn't exist. It's all in your head. Get over it. So today, listening to someone who's leading a company be able to talk about it so openly, it's comforting. And it helps me go back to my father today and tell him that what he went through wasn't irrelevant. It was relevant. And unfortunately, at the time, he had no one to lean on. But today, I could be his ally. Today, I could be there for him and speak up for him if need be. Because the key is to show up for the men and the women in our lives. You don't always have to have answers. It's not that someone's sitting there and asking you a question and you have to say, oh, well, I think you should do this, or I think you should do that. You could just sit there silently. They just need your shoulder and, potentially a cup of tea, a cup of coffee, or any kind of beverage or dessert. But it's your presence. Because if they're reaching out to you, it's because they trust you. It's because they feel that you share empathy. And the only way you can support that is to really just be there for them. And that's my goal as an ally, is to provide that safe space for anyone who needs it, whether it's within our organization, outside of our organization. Because as a company, people tend to think we have to be professional. We can't let others know about our issues. But I could tell you on another personal level is that I've battled mental health and I was able to go to my boss. I was able to go to my senior management and say, look, I'm struggling right now. I don't know what to do. Please help me. And that's where everyone needs to understand that even though they're our bosses, even though they're our senior managers, they are human. They've potentially, hopefully not, but they've potentially gone through their own struggles. So they will most likely understand you. So yeah, that's how I feel about it. And I want to thank you as well for welcoming me and letting me share my piece in this.
Thanks so much, Sharina. And to Troy, I've observed you, Sharina, beeline across the office to greet people with your big beaming smile. All of those things, I think, all contribute to making an environment where people feel like we're in it together and they can talk to each other, because those little things add up to be the big things. So thanks so much for sharing that, Sharina. And one of the things you talked about was how you've helped people in the workplace, and a good friend of mine, Howard. I know you've had some struggles, and you've very bravely volunteered to share some of your story. And you had your own Sharina, I think, in the UK business when you were in the UK business. So if I can invite you, maybe build on Sharina's point about allyship and some of your lived experiences and having come out the other side.
Sure, yeah. First of all, it's a pleasure to be able to talk to everyone today. Probably what's quite shocking to start with is that and for those who know and don't know me, like in 2024, I tried to take my own life. I kind of put that down to like the pressure I'd put myself under. So, you know, providing for like my family, I had kids in private school, supporting friends, aging parents, like, and also like, sounds silly, but like trying to be like the model employee. It all really just snowballed into becoming too much, and I just couldn't mask it anymore. Kind of in my head, how I looked at it was like, it sounds silly to say, but I thought the best option to make everyone's life better was just to take my own, because I was showing up poorly in the office. In my head, that's the version of reality that I had created. I thought, when I looked at others, they had like almost like the model family, how like dads would interact with their children, with their wives, how they were able to spend time with their parents. I felt grossly inadequate. And kind of when I think back to kind of what started this, I'd say that this is probably something that was in the making for probably 20 years, from whether it be imposter syndrome or that quote of comparison being the thief of joy. Like, I just felt very inadequate. But those looking at me wouldn't have ever seen any of that, because there was a very strong mask that had gone through a lot of challenges. But as I said, it just couldn't stand it any longer. And the events that led up to that day were, they're very hard to recall. But what I can recall very, very vividly out the other side is two reasons why I'm here today. One is because there was a colleague in the UK business, ironically on a town hall, who stood up and said, with a lot of courage, what he went through and his own mental health battles. And for me, it normalized it. There was the person there, which I thought, there's somebody that understands it, that gets it. So it gave me an ally that I could confide in without judgment or prejudice. Because if I'm honest, I felt very embarrassed by all of this. It felt like very first world problems. I didn't feel like, I felt very inadequate. But having that person felt like almost like a bit of a beacon that I could go to. So one day, I hadn't really planned it, but the mask came off, and kind of I erupted to him in confidence, and kind of from there, it kind of changed into what I've got today, which was kind of unbeknown to me. I've got like a very tight group of co-workers and friends, and when you get into that mode of just not being able to see, you only see the reality that you've created, not the actual reality that is present. I couldn't see those friends, and I couldn't see those co-workers who wanted to help me. So the enactment of talking to that colleague opened that up, and I could see it. And so through a period of life, like, they really helped me get the help that I needed, and helped me seek the life that I know that I can have. And that I'm forever grateful for. That is, I think, a gift that I'll never able to be fully repaid, which is why I'm here today to talk to you about it, because I want to, there's a couple of things I want to take the stigma out of it, and taking the stigma out of it is by sharing like the very very real battle that I've gone through. And what I'd say for all those who are going through darkness, like, seek help to kind of unpack what you're going through. There is no shame, there is no judgment in doing so. So what you think there isn't. There's just people in your corner supporting you and cheering you to really be the version that you want to be. So, and I'm proof of that, right? So I guess in summary is, out of darkness, I think I'm in a much better position. Yeah, I still go through a lot of challenges, but there's tools and coping mechanisms that, through the counselling and the support that I've had, that I can now utilize when I get into those experiences. And my therapist gave me a very good quote, well, not quote, but just way of looking at something, which was, she said that you should look at, when you're looking at people, treat them almost as a garden. Like, you can look at their garden and you can think of things that you like in their garden. You can think of things that maybe you don't like in their garden, and then you can help build your own garden. But the key is you're not building their garden, you're building your own. So yeah, as I said at the top, a big thank you to everyone who's stayed, listened, and allowed me to share today.
Well, it's very powerful. Thank you so much, Howard, and hopefully you've been able to signal to somebody else that maybe struggling, that you're their version of it was Adam Robinson, wasn't it, on the UK town hall? But I think Howard and I worked together in the UK. You suggested showing up in a poor state. I can tell you emphatically, Howard, you were not turning up in a poor state. Howard was turning up as, I would dare say, probably a high performer in most people's eyes. It's your perception compared to what you're really showing up as. And someone said to me the other day, if you zoom out far enough, you can't see the planet Earth anymore, which it was just a point about the relative size of the struggles. And this society would be far, far, far worse off without you in it, Howard, not least your two beautiful children. So thank you so much for staying around, not least for me, because you're a very, very good friend of mine. One of the things you talked about was taking the stigma out of the talk, Howard. And, I think you've done a very big symbolic motion in taking the stigma out of it. But James, you on our mental health committee last week, I thought you shared something that was close to you, and I thought that I think that took our committee to another level, and our men's mental health group to another level. Of you are, in my eyes, and I think in many people's eyes, an incredibly strong character, and maybe a little bit larger than life. But you turned up and shared some vulnerabilities, and I'm convinced for many that signaled that if it's safe for James, it's safe for the rest of us. But I just invite you maybe to talk from your point of view about speaking up and some of your experiences recently.
Oh, that means so much. Thank you, Vish. First off, Howard, thank you for sharing. Very powerful. The more we hear powerful statements from everyone in this group and within the company, it helps us all understand ourselves a little bit more. So Howard, your story, incredible. If anybody hasn't read the ERG newsletter that just went out recently with Rickey's story, please look through your inboxes and read it. It's extremely powerful, and again, helps us understand where we are. So before I get to what I shared with the group earlier in the week or last week, you got to understand a little bit about me and why speaking up is so hard for a lot of men. So I'm the son of a hardworking Greek immigrant father, second generation Italian mother. Picture it, Sicily, 1923. No, I'm just kidding, but picture it, Brooklyn, New York, in the 70s and 80s. Growing up, it was ingrained in me that men are the strength and support of the family. More importantly, strength also kept you from being preyed upon while navigating the streets of New York in the 70s and 80s as a teen. Culture where being vulnerable was not accepted, and discussing hardship, as Sharina mentioned earlier, was unthinkable with the people that you were around, because you were absolutely told, suck it up, you got something to do, get it done. One of the, throughout life, we're expected to lead, build family, specifically when it comes to men. And this is obviously changing with younger generations, but we're expected to lead. We're expected to build beautiful, healthy lives for our families, to be strong husbands, be strong fathers, be strong leaders at work. We're taught to provide, persevere, and get it done. There's a lot of weight in all those statements. One of the main issues with this is, who are we allowed to be transparent with? Can we go to our wives? Well, when we go to our wives with stresses, it only compounds the worry that we have, because it causes worry on their end. Can we go to our leadership without the fear that they will see us as weak or having weaknesses where they need strength? Can we go to our team members who will essentially lose confidence in our ability to lead? These are all real thoughts that a lot of men in our business share every day. And ultimately, the stigma of mental strain causes too many men to have decades and decades of overcompensation. Unhealthy coping, which really manifests itself with many, per Vish's statement that 4 men will lose their lives during this call, ends up manifesting itself in self-harm. Negative acts that are performed upon ourselves or the people around us, like substance abuse, domestic violence, and suicide, are essentially the end results of a very weighty element on our shoulders. At some point last year, I realized that I cannot internalize what I cannot control. And it's really easy to say, it's really easy to hear, but I can tell you it is one of the toughest things in the world that I have ever had to face and exercise. The immediate weight that was lifted off my shoulders when I got the courage to finally say, I am not okay. Those 4 words, when I wasn't feeling okay, was one of the hardest things to overcome. What I shared with the group this week was, this week I took a loss. I don't lose, right? Since I am young, I would never allow myself to lose. I prepare well, I execute well, and I expect to win every time I go out there. And last week, I was taught a pretty tough lesson. No matter how well you prepare and how well you perform, sometimes you have to take losses. And what happens is, in that loss, I had massive amounts of resentment. And in the past, I would have stewed for weeks over it. Ultimately, it would have spilled over into my interactions at the office. It would have clouded my decision-making ability. And essentially, it would have affected my family because I would have been preoccupied and I would have lacked the presence that I need to have at home and that my family deserves. Being lucky enough to be in this group, and the timing could not have been better, I was able to share the very next morning how I was feeling and the place where my head was. And within minutes, I was able to heal a lot of the initial feelings and be able to shed a lot of the weight that was sitting there. It was almost instantaneous. And ultimately, everybody on this call and everybody who watches it in the future should know that you deserve an outlet. Everybody here deserves an outlet. Speaking up to those that you trust is not weakness. It's the very definition of strength. It is empowerment. Being comfortable to speak up, or more importantly, taking interest in others, to say a kind word, to recognize that someone might be struggling, to see the signs that someone needs to be reached out to, even if they're ready or not ready to talk about it. Just knowing that someone took the interest and took recognition of a potential struggle that's going on will change the lives of the person you're talking to. It'll also change the lives of the people around them. By creating or joining no judge zone groups, as I like to call them, lets you know that you're not alone. Just listening, just lending an ear to what others have to say will give you the courage to start to face some of the things that you need to face as well. And ultimately, we can change the culture of silence. It's within all of us to be able to do that. Everybody Hurts is not just a song by REM. It is like within every one of us. Denying that you're hurting only pushes off what you need to face. And ultimately, regardless of advantages or disadvantages in life, roles, both in life and business, your background, your future, if we create spaces where other people can be honest and shed some of that weight, if we're cognizant of the others around us, if we're in tune with their feelings, we can help change the suffering and silence that goes on within our families and our workspace. So we can make a difference with really simple gestures. We can be a part of that change, but ultimately, as I stated earlier, fun fact, it's good for your own mental health when you take the time to help others. So that's all I've got, Vish.
No, thanks so much, James. And you, I think you definitely made a difference in our meeting the other day. But and you're spot on about strength. It's a strength to be vulnerable. I'm conscious we've got Andy here as a professional who's heard us talk. So Andy, if I can invite you on maybe some of the things you've heard and some of the things that you see in your professional career, and obviously some of your challenge that you went through. But thank you so much for joining again. But yeah, I'd love for you to maybe share some of your insights and your advice to people that may or maybe currently struggling or may come into some struggles in the future.
Yeah, very happy to. Firstly, yeah, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm delighted to be able to take part today on International Men's Day. I'm passionate about men's mental health. It's kind of my niche, really. I work with a lot of men and a lot of men who are experiencing addiction and also challenges to do with their neurodivergence. I sat here feeling a little bit redundant, to be honest, because the speakers so far, everyone's been so eloquent and the messages have been so spot on. I feel as though there's part of me that has nothing to add, but I think there's a couple of reflections that I'd like to share, really. Firstly, Troy talked about making a change, talked about that 30 minutes of exercise that you decided to do. And we talk a lot in therapy about foundations for good mental health. And what you touched upon there, Troy, is one of them, is about movement. You know, it doesn't have to be beasting yourself for 30 minutes at the gym, but you can go out for a walk. You know, it's just the act of moving and doing it as regularly as you can, because that can be a real struggle. For example, if you're suffering with really bad depression. But that's part of the foundation that's going to help, along with things like, you know, what you put into your body in terms of your diet, what you consume beyond your diet as well. So media you consume. I think most of us, or a lot of us, consume too much news these days. And let's face it, that's not very good for our mental health, is it? How many good news stories do we hear when we tune in to whichever our favorite channel is for the news? So foundations are important. And there was another word that sprang to mind listening to Howard and James, and that's distortion. You know, this kind of distorted lens that men develop. You know, James, you talked about the culture of growing up in 70s, 80s Brooklyn. And when I think of 70s, 80s Brooklyn, I go to films that I've seen that are set in those times, and it's kind of romanticized there. But you also see those male characters for whom vulnerability isn't a possibility. You know, it has to be. You have to compete. You have to be strong. You can't show any chinks in your armor. All right. So you suffer in silence as a result. And Howard, you talked about how your lens has become distorted, really, in terms of how you viewed yourself, and how you imagined through that distorted lens how others viewed you too. And what that does is, of course, take away any sense of safety. Because the one thing, and Sharina, you spoke eloquently about this as well, the one thing that men need is to feel safe if they're going to show any kind of vulnerability. And they need spaces in which to do that. And those spaces don't have to be like where I'm sat today in a therapy room. They just have to be created by the people in those spaces. The people in those spaces who will ask the question, You know, how are you doing? And maybe those people who won't accept the first automatic response, that's fine. You know, I'm fine. You know, they'll say, well, you know, is that true? How are you really doing? You know, they'll persist. They'll open up. They'll try and engage them on more than just the superficial level. Because when you do that, when you show humanity, when you show curiosity to men by asking open questions and not greeting them with any kind of judgment, then you're creating that space in which they can begin to show their vulnerability. Too often, and I've had this, you know, I've been confronted by sharing vulnerability. I've been confronted by a reaction which says, well, you know, what have you got to feel depressed about? You know, you're in a good job, you're in a good salary, you got a lovely family. Yeah, how can you possibly feel depressed? Now, talk about a way to shut down somebody's vulnerability and to close down a conversation, because immediately this is somebody that you can't feel safe with, because they're not listening to you. They're immediately making comparisons and inviting you to make comparisons that are just going to make you feel even worse than you already do, because they're reiterating probably messages that you're telling yourself anyway. So, you know, I see this, I hear these stories obviously a lot in the therapy room, and I hear how pernicious the silence is and how the pressure builds for men until they kind of reach a point where, as inevitably it does, something breaks, yeah, and it comes to the surface, by which time, of course, then you're into survival and then repair before you can then kind of grow and thrive again as well. So, yeah, so I'm a bit blown away actually by what I've heard, and I really appreciate everybody sharing their stories and their vulnerability so far. I think I'll leave it there for now.
Thanks, Andy. That was really insightful, and it's great to see you, similar to Howard, seem like you're doing well after your struggles. Andy's obviously a professional. We can share his contact details if anyone wanted to speak to Andy or get in touch. But Rickey, you've been doing a lot of work on the Men's Mental Health Committee with the Employee Assistance Line and where people can go to help. So if I can just invite you, and then we'll get over to Robert to just maybe share a little bit about what you found with the employee assistance and how people can get help.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Vish. I can't, much like some of Andy's comments, I can't add significantly to what's been said here. And clearly there's a whole lot more content for us to plow through in this space, but just a couple of items for you. And one, I'll hijack one of Andy's comments. When we utter those 4 words, how are you doing, in whatever version that is, let's mean that. Let's start shifting our perspectives around one another and in the workplace. I understand that, but look beyond the position and just understand we're talking to a person, and that dignity and humanity ought to show up and live loud and clear in that conversation. We just don't know the extent to which you may be making that pivotal difference in someone's life in that moment, and literally in someone's life. And we are facing a scenario when we start talking about men's mental health, where we may not be able to eliminate disorders, but what we can do is eradicate this aspect of someone taking their life. We can solve that problem, and each of us have responsibility to do so. So the only other thing I'll mention, I guess, as part of this is, if there's anyone out there right now, of the 64 people that I'm looking at online here, if you need help right now, get it right now. Don't wait, don't delay. There's all sorts of courage in doing that. Talk to someone that's close to you, and if they can't help, they ought to be able to minimally point you to resources. And Vish mentioned our EAP program. A very robust organization that DCC is aligned with, that has resources that can help. So get help now if you need it. I always say this to people talking about mental health. We're either talking to someone that's headed into a crisis, they're in the middle of a crisis, or they're emerging from a crisis. And all of those things are problems. So get help if you need it. That would be my color for us here, Vish. Thank you.
Thanks, Rickey. And just to double down on Ricky's point, we anyone who's struggling, reach out. If you don't know where to go, reach out to me, reach out to Rickey, James, Sharina, Troy. We're at least I can definitely talk to people on this panel. I know we are super keen to support and help our community. So if you don't feel you've got anywhere else to lean to, contact us and we can help or point you in the direction of the employee assistance program or in the direction of Andy or others. And Robert, I know from a ops point of view, you've been really generous with some of the things that you've shared around the role, especially in the tight community that's ops, of the support and the friendships and the relationships. But it'd be good if you could maybe just share some of your insights and then we'll wrap up.
Okay, Vish, thank you. I just have some open-ended questions that I just wanted to throw out there for all of us to think about and possibly grow this. As we have a great opportunity here, we have many of our hourly associates who don't have a LinkedIn account, don't have access to DCC Technology and the links and the videos that are posted almost on a daily basis. We have a clean slate here to incorporate this and other important initiatives, and maybe look at another avenue to open this up so that the channels for all employees, they can learn, share, and use all the valuable tools that many of us have access to that they don't. Should we start using Biz Library more for these type of initiatives? Just my open-ended questions, thinking of the hourly associates, many of which we need to get this out more for them as well. Back to you, Viz.
Thanks, Robert. And I won't attempt to summarize everything everyone has said, but it's been incredibly powerful. So just a few points. One, thank you again to everyone who's spared the time and been vulnerable on this call, and everyone behind the scenes like Nick and Laura and Tina who have helped to put it together, and Eric on the men's mental health and the JAM mental health committee, and Andy, thank you to you for sparing your time generously to join us. Probably the thing that sticks out, one of the things is, Rickey, your point around how are you doing? And since it's International Men's Day, I'd really encourage everyone to take Rickey's call to action of ask somebody how they're really doing and see the person, because we're in a people-to-people business. And the sobering fact that every 14 minutes a man commits suicide. There's 1,148 employees in our North American business, and there's 1,404 in our European business. So that's a huge amount of people that if we were to act as a community and support each other, we could have a really profound impact on a huge number of people. Once we get some momentum, I'm sure our vendors and customers will form a community with us too. But I just want to thank everyone again. And if anyone is struggling, please get in touch with us or look on the email that was sent out. The EAP numbers are on the email. And if anyone wants to be part of the men's mental health group and support one another and get support and offer support, please click on the link or ping anyone who's been on this call, especially probably Eric, Scott, Rickey, and I. But thank you again.